a big book, so we're not going to be reading most of it. We're going to be reading, I don't know if we'll even read one chapter because it is a pretty long book, but it is a book that I've wanted to read for the longest time, so I thought I'd start it with you all. I've got a beautiful version here. The cover has some like maple leaves on it. Oh, I've got it upside down. Maple leaves on it. And yes, before we get started though, I hope you're all doing well. I know, especially, it depends on which side of the world you're on, but right now it's getting a little bit colder, a little bit darker as well. Hopefully it's not too bright, this lighting. I did try to close the blinds, but the light has still come through quite bright. So when I'm editing it, I might try and like lower the lighting a little bit. But this is what we're going to be doing for today's video. So hopefully, if you are struggling or wanted to read Jane Eyre, we can read it together. And let's see what it's all about. I might actually go and try and lower the lighting now, and then we'll get started. Okay, that is definitely more relaxing. So let's get started. Make sure that you're comfy. You might be lying down, or you might be travelling, or whatever you're doing. Let's take some time to relax together. This is quite a heavy book, so I might have to end up leaning it on this little table or box I'm on. So, Charlotte Bronte is the author, and this book actually gives a little bit of a timeline of the author, and there's some acknowledgements as well. Just so you know, Charlotte Bronte was born in 1816, so a pretty long time ago, and she was the third child of Patrick and Maria Bronte, and she was born in Yorkshire. I'm just making sure that the microphone is up. There we go. I always get these two buttons confused. Okay, so when did she write? I don't remember when she wrote Jane Eyre. Okay, I can't find that right now. There's also a little introduction that for people who are new to the book, this essentially tells you the whole plot. So I won't read that because I don't want to spoil it all already. So that's why this big book is so thick, because it just is. Okay, then there's a note on the text. Okay, there's also a preface, which I won't read because I want to just get started with the book. Okay, let me just open it a little bit more so I can actually hold it. Okay, chapter 1. There was no possibility of taking a walk that day. We had been wandering, indeed, in the leafless shrubbery, an hour in the morning, but since dinner, Mrs. Read, when there was no company, dined early. The cold winter wind had brought with it clouds so sombre and a rain so penetrating that further outdoor exercise was now out of the question. I was glad of it. I never liked long walks, especially on chilly afternoons. Dreadful to me was the coming home in the raw twilight, with nipped fingers and toes, and a heart saddened by the chidings of Bessie the nurse, and humbled by the consciousness of my physical inferiority to Eliza, John, and Georgiana Read. The said Eliza, John, and Georgiana were now clustered round their mamma in the drawing room. She lay reclined on a sofa by the fireside, and with her darlings about her, for the time neither quarrelling nor crying, looked perfectly happy. Me, she had dispensed from joining the group, saying she regretted to be under the necessity of keeping me at a distance, but that until she heard from Bessie, and could discover by her own observation that I was endeavouring in good earnest to acquire a more sociable and childlike disposition, a more attractive and sprightly manner, something lighter, franker, franker, more natural as it were, she really must exclude me from privileges intended only for contented, happy little children. What does Bessie say I have done? I asked. Jane, I don't like cavaliers or questioners. Besides, is something truly forbidding in a child, taking up her elders in that manner. Be seated somewhere, and until you can speak pleasantly, remain silent. A small breakfast room adjoined the drawing room. I slipped in there. It contained a bookcase. I soon possessed myself of a volume, taking care that it should be one stored with pictures. I mounted into the window seat, gathering up my feet. I sat cross-legged, like a Turk, and having drawn the red moreen curtain nearly close, I was shrined in double retirement. Folds of scarlet drapery shut in my view to the right hand. To the left were the clear panes of glass, protecting but not separating me from the dear November day. At intervals, while turning over the leaves in my book, I studied the aspect of that winter afternoon. Afar it offered a pale blank of mist and cloud, near a scene of wet lawn and storm-beat shrub, with ceaseless rain sweeping away wildly before a long and lamentable blast. I returned to my book, Bewick's History of British Birds. The letterpress thereof I cared little for, generally speaking, and yet there were certain introductory pages that, child as I was, I could not pass quite as a blank. They were those which treat of the haunts of seafowl, of the solitary rocks and promontories by them only inhabited, of the coast of Norway, studded with isles from its southern extremity, the Lindness or Naze to the North Cape, where the Northern Ocean in vast whirls boils round the naked, melancholy isles of farthest Thule, and the Atlantic surge pours in among the stormy Hebrides. Nor could I pass unnoticed the suggestion of the bleak shores of Lapland, Siberia, Spitzbergen, Nova Zembla, Iceland, Greenland, with the vast sweep of the Arctic zone, and those forlorn regions of dreary space, that reservoir of frost and snow where firm fields of ice, the accumulation of centuries of winters, glazed in alpine heights above heights, surrounded the pole, and concentre the multiplied rigours of extreme cold. Of these death-white realms I formed an idea of my own, shadowy like all the half-comprehended notions that float dim through children's brains, but strangely impressive. The words in these introductory pages connected themselves with the succeeding vignettes, and gave significance to the rock standing up alone in a sea of billow and spray, to the broken boat stranded on a desolate coast, to the cold and ghastly moon glancing through bars of cloud at a wreck just sinking. I cannot tell what sentiment haunted the quite solitary churchyard, with its inscribed headstone, its gate, its 2 trees, its low horizon, girdled by a broken wall, and its newly risen crescent, attesting the hour of eventide, the 2 ships becalmed on a torpid sea, I believe to be marine phantoms. The fiend, pinning down the thief's back behind him, I passed over quickly. It was an object of terror. So was the black-horned thing seated aloof on a rock, surveying a distant crowd surrounding a gallows. Each picture told a story, mysterious often to my undeveloped understanding and imperfect feelings, yet ever profoundly interesting as the tales Bessie sometimes narrated on winter evenings, when she chanced to be in good humour, and when, having brought her ironing table to the nursery hearth, she allowed us to sit about it, and while she got up, Mrs. Reed's lace frills and crimped her nightcap borders fed our eager attention with passages of love and adventure, taken from old fairy tales and older ballads, or, as at a later period I discovered, from the pages of Pamela and Henry Earl of Morland. With Bewick to my knee, I was then happy. Happy at least in my way. I feared nothing but interruption, and that came too soon. The breakfast room door opened. "Bah, Madame Mope," cried the voice of John Reed. Then he paused. He found the room apparently empty. "Where the dickens is she?" he continued. "Lizzie, George," calling to his sisters. "Joanne is not here. Tell Mamma she is run Read had found it out himself. He was not quick either of vision or conception, but Eliza just put her head in at the door and said at once, "She is in the window seat, to be sure, Jack." And I came out immediately, for I trembled at the idea of being dragged forth by the said Jack. "What do you want?" I asked, with awkward diffidence. "Say, what do you want, Master Read?" was the answer. "I want you to come here," and seating himself in an armchair, he intimated by gesture that I was to approach and stand before him. John Read was a schoolboy of 14 years old, 4 years older than I, for I was but 10, large and stout for his age, with a dingy and unwholesome skin, thick lineaments in a spacious visage, heavy limbs and large extremities. He gorged himself habitually at table, which made him bilious, and gave him a dim and blared eye and flabby cheeks. He ought now to have been at school, but his mamma had taken him home for a month or two, on account of his delicate health. Mr. Miles, the master, affirmed that he would do very well if he had fewer cakes and sweetmeats sent him from home, but the mother's heart turned from an opinion so harsh, and inclined rather to the more refined idea that John's sallowness was owing to over-application, and perhaps to pining after home. John had not much affection for his mother and sisters, and an antipathy to me. He bullied and punished me, not 2 or 3 times in the week, nor once or twice in a day, but continually. Every nerve I had feared him, and every morsel of flesh on my bones shrank when he came near. There were moments when I was bewildered by the terror he inspired, because I had no appeal whatever against either his menaces or his inflictions. The servants did not like to offend their young master by taking my part against him, and Mrs. Read was blind and deaf on the subject. She never saw him strike or heard him abuse me, though he did both now and then in her very presence, more frequently, however, behind her back. Habitually obedient to John, I came up to his chair. He spent some 3 minutes in thrusting out his tongue at me as far as he could, without damaging the roots. I knew he would soon strike, and while dreading the blow, I mused on the disgusting and ugly appearance of him who would presently deal it. I wonder if he read that notion in my face, for all at once, without speaking, he struck suddenly and strongly. I tottered, and on regaining my equilibrium, retired back a step or 2 from his chair. "This is for your impudence in answering mamma a while since," said he, "and for your sneaking away, of getting behind curtains, and for the look you had in your eyes 2 minutes since, you rat." Accustomed to John Read's abuse, I never had an idea of replying to it. My care was how to endure the blow, which would certainly follow the insult. "What were you doing behind the curtain?" he asked. "I was reading." "Show the book." I returned to the window and fetched it thence. "You have no business to take our books. You are dependent. Mamma says you have no money. Your father left you none. You ought to beg, and not to live here with gentlemen's children like us, and eat the same meals we do, and wear clothes at our mamma's expense. Now I'll teach you to rummage my bookshelves, for they are mine. All the house belongs to me, or will do in a few years. Go and stand by the door, out of the way of the mirror and the windows." I did so, not at first aware what his intention. What was his intention? But when I saw him lift and poise the book and stand in act to hurl it, I instinctively started aside, with a cry of alarm. Not soon enough, however, the volume was flung. It hit me and I fell, striking my head against the door and cutting it. The cut bled, the pain was sharp. My terror had passed its climax. Other feelings succeeded. "Wicked and cruel boy," I said, "you are like a murderer, you are like a slave driver, and you are like the Roman emperors." I had read Goldsman's History of Rome, and had formed my opinion of Nero, Caligula, etc. Also I had drawn parallels, in silence, which I never thought thus to have declared aloud. What, he cried. "Did she say to me? Did she say that to me? Did Did you hear her, Eliza and Georgina? Won't I tell Mamma? But first he ran headlong at me. I felt him grasp my hair and my shoulder. He'd closed with a desperate thing. I really saw in him a tyrant, a murderer. I felt a drop or two of blood from my head trickle down my neck, and was sensible of somewhat pungent suffering. These sensations, for the time, predominated over fear, and I received him in frantic sword. I don't very well know what I did with my hands, but he called me rat, rat, and bellowed out loud. Aid was near him. Eliza and Georgiana had run for Mrs. Read, who was gone upstairs. She now came upon the scene, followed by Bessie and her maid Abbott. We were parted. I heard the words, "Dear, dear, what a fury to fly at Master John! Did ever anybody see such a picture of passion?" Then Mrs. Read subjoined, "Take her away to the Red Room and lock her in there." 4 hands were immediately laid upon me, and I was borne upstairs. Chapter 2. So we'll read a little bit of Chapter 2. I'm not sure if we'll get through it all, okay? I resisted all the way, a new thing for me, and a circumstance which greatly strengthened the bad opinion Bessie and Miss Abbott were disposed to entertain of me. The fact is, I was a trifle beside myself, or rather out of myself, as the French would say. I was conscious that a moment's mutiny had already rendered me liable to strange penalties, and like any other rebel slave, I felt resolved, in my desperation, to go all lengths. "Hold her arms, Miss Abbott, she's like a mad cat." For shame, cried the lady's maid. "What shocking conduct, Miss Eyre, to strike a young gentleman, your benefactress's son, your young master." "Master? How is he my master? Am I a servant?" "No, you are less than a servant, for you do nothing for your keep. There, sit down and think over your wickedness." They had got me by this time into the apartment indicated by Mrs. Read, and had thrust me upon a stool. My impulse was to rise from it like a spring. Their 2 pair of hands arrested me instantly. "If you don't sit still, you must be tied down," said Bessie. "Miss Abbott, lend me your garters. She would break mine directly." Miss Abbott turned to divest a stout leg of the necessary ligature. This preparation for bonds and the additional ignominy it interfered took a little of the excitement out of me. "Don't take them off," I cried. "I will not stir." In guarantee whereof I attached myself to my seat by my hands. "Mind you don't," said Bessie, and when she had ascertained that I was really subsiding, she loosened her hold of me. Then she and Miss Abbott stood with folded arms, looking darkly and doubtfully on my face, as incredulous of my sanity. "She never did so before," at last said Bessie, turning to the Abigail. "But it was always in her," was the reply. "I've told Mrs. often my opinion about the child, and Mrs. agreed with me. She's an underhand little thing. I never saw a girl of her age with so much cover." Bessie answered not, but ere long, addressing me, she said, "You ought to be aware, miss, that you are under obligations to Mrs. Read. She keeps you. If she were to turn you off, you would have to go to the poorhouse." I had nothing to say to these words. They were not new to me. My very first recollection of existence included hints of the same kind of reproach of my dependence had become a vague sing-song in my ear, very painful and crushing, but only half intelligible. Miss Abbott joined in, "And you ought not to think yourself on an equality with the Mrs. Read and Master Read, because Mrs. kindly allows you to be brought up with them. They will have a great deal of money, and you will have none. It is your place to be humble, and to try to make yourself agreeable to them." "What we tell you is for your good," added Bessie, in no harsh voice. "You should try to be useful and pleasant, then perhaps you would have a home here. But if you become passionate and rude, Mrs. will send you away, I am sure." "Besides," said Miss Abbott, "God will punish her. He might strike her dead in the midst of her tantrums, and then where would she go? Come, Bessie, we will leave her. I wouldn't have her heart for anything. Say your prayers, Miss Eyre, when you're by yourself, you don't repent, something bad might be permitted to come down the chimney and fetch you away. They went, shutting the door and locking it behind them. The Red Room was a spare chamber, very seldom slept in. I might say never, indeed, unless when a chance influx of visitors at Gateshead Hall rendered it necessary to turn to account all the accommodation it contained, yet it was one of the largest and stalest chambers in the mansion. Okay, let me just check how many pages are left. I don't know if I have time to finish this chapter, but let's just finish the page. A bed supported on massive pillars of mahogany, hung with curtains of deep red damask, stood out like a tabernacle in the centre. The two large windows with their blinds always drawn down were half-shrouded in festoons and falls of similar drapery. The carpet was red, the table at the foot of the bed was covered with a crimson cloth. The walls were a soft fawn colour, with a blush of pink in it. The wardrobe, the toilet table, the chairs were of darkly polished old mahogany. One of those deep surrounding shades rose high and glared white. The piled-up mattresses and pillows of the bed spread with a snowy Marseille counterpane. Scarcely less prominent was an ample cushioned easy chair near the head of the bed, also white with a footstool before it, and looking, as I thought, like a pale throne. The room was chill because it seldom had a fire. It was silent because remote from the nursery and kitchens, solemn because it was known to be so seldom entered. Okay, let me just put a little bookmark in there so I can remember. That's how much I've read. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it.